As Sophia prepares for some more music, I want to welcome folks. We have an extended prelude time this morning as we adjust our schedule to meet the 10:30 start of Preaching Along the Potomac, which we host this morning. And I'm so grateful for Sophia offering this extra music for us to enjoy as we have her back with us this Sunday.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Bazell, and I'm a grateful member of the Board of Trustees. Today is Sunday, August 4th. At UUCA, we are a people of many beliefs, origins, sexualities, genders, abilities, and disabilities, both seen and unseen. We are honored to be hosting Preaching Along the Potomac this Sunday, and we welcome our friends from sibling UU congregations, both here and online. I am eager to learn more about friendship this morning, as making and keeping them hasn't always come easily for me. So often it is distance or life stage that gets in the way, but I am aware that my uneasiness with myself can also create a disconnect. Recently, a childhood friend stopped responding to my emails and texts. I have been a frequent visitor to her home in Vermont over the years, and I felt like one of her family. During COVID, though, I showed up in a really rough state of loneliness and anger that caused a tearful argument. While we talked it through afterwards, the harm clearly was not resolved. This community consists of people who covenant to walk together through hard times and extend grace to each other when we fumble. In this supportive space, I am learning to be a better friend to myself and to others. Thank you. Let's all show up in Fellowship Hall, which is right back there, or the next church event, ready to start new and deepen old friendships. If you're new to UUCA, pick up a green coffee cup in Fellowship Hall so members can start up that first conversation. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
Barbara, thank you for that welcome. I did not anticipate feeling teary from your shared vulnerability quite so early in the service. But I am so grateful to serve a congregation where we can hold that. Thank you for bringing it to us. I am grateful, in fact, to serve this congregation every Sunday, and this Sunday in particular, as we welcome our friends, as Barbara said, from sibling UU congregations around the DMV. I know there are folks here and watching from Columbia UU and from Fairfax and from the Washington Ethical Society and from Davies and maybe also from Cedar Lane or River Road or Rockville or definitely from Rockville. I know that. I talked to Rebecca. And yet many other places. And we are so glad to have you with us this morning. I want to offer a special message and congratulations to the congregations who are likely this weekend welcoming new interim ministers, contract ministers, and settled ministers to be with them. The beginning of August is an exciting time, and we're grateful to share that with all of you. And I see that we also have some of our own ministers with us here. Hi, Sue Browning, off from the congregation that she serves on the Eastern Shore. We're glad to have you here. I'm Reverend Amanda Poppy. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm honored to serve as senior minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington. If you are curious about where you are, that's it. I actually always appreciate that the board welcome includes the date as well. Okay, yes, let's orient ourselves in time and space and orient ourselves to being together. I am joined this morning as part of a worship team by Tommy Lowe, our worship associate whose pronouns are he, him, by our former director of Transformational Music Ministries. I think that's where we landed, right, Sophia? Sophia Morayali, who has been away from us for a time, and we are so grateful to have her back with us for this Sunday and to get to share in not just music, but in community and connection as well. So I'm so pleased you're here, Sophia. As always, by our amazing tech team, that's Cameron and Art this morning, by all of the people who make Sunday morning possible, the ushers and the greeters and the coffee cup washers, and our teachers in religious education as well, and by Eric Ackerman, who is our song leader this morning. Thank you, Eric, and by all of you. we create this space together, and it is different every time we gather because we are different every time we gather. So I am grateful for that. I want to invite you, therefore, to turn and say hello to the people who are creating this space with you this morning, especially someone you don't yet know. Friends, it is good to be together. I have, of course, lost Tommy to connections with people. I invite you to find a seat again. It can even be a different seat. If you made a friend during the interim, please feel free to move. And I invite you to continue that conversation and connection during coffee hour after our service. Our call to worship this morning comes from the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. Reverend Romano Griffin served for some time as associate minister at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. She serves now as the senior minister at All Souls Indy in Indianapolis, and it felt appropriate to have a voice that reminded us this Sunday that our connections that exist here in the greater DC area also connect us with congregations in other parts of the country. What a joy. Here are her words. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship.
Morning. Each Sunday at UUCA, we light a candle of compassion for those who are suffering around the world, across our country, and right here in our own community. This week, as I watched the Ukrainian athletes compete in the Olympics, my mind and heart wondered about how many of their friends were serving on the front line of war, and how many of them had been wounded or even killed. There was so much senseless violence in Ukraine and across the world. Today, we light a candle of compassion for those victims of that senseless violence. May our flame be the seed that grows and one day heals the suffering in others and in ourselves. And now we light our chalice. The words are in our order of service. I'll read the first part, and then we'll read the second part together. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
I invite you now to rise and, oh, we're so close, Teague, right after the song. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 361. This hymn to me is one of those earworms. I am sorry that you will be singing it to yourself on Tuesday, but I hope when you do, you remember the fellowship we are creating here this morning.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
You've got it. That's right. It is always a joy to see what accompanists do with the don't be afraid of some change. Sometimes we get key changes. That was a good one, Sophia. Thank you. As Teague knows and is appropriately signaling, this is the time when I'd like to invite anyone who is younger, perhaps smaller, but not necessarily, I'm not that tall, to come and join me on the chancel if you would like to tell a story. I could not find quite the right story for this Sunday. I just looked and looked, and I wanted a story about friendship, and I couldn't find the right one. And so I thought maybe you all could help me tell the story. Do you think you could help me come up with a story for today? Yeah, okay, great, thank you, that's fantastic. And hey, will you come stay with me, Teague? Excellent. Do you want to sit down so you can help me tell the story a little bit? And maybe if we need some extra help, will anybody out there help us as well? Okay, excellent. That's great. So I wanted to tell a story about two friends. Oh, Teague and Billy. Okay, well, sure. We can have a story about Teague and Billy. That sounds good. What do you think? Thumbs up? Okay, great. Super. Thumbs up. So once upon a time, there were two friends named Teague and Billy. Uh-huh. And most of the time, Teague and Billy got along just fine. Now, what kinds of things might they do as friends that when they're getting along just fine? What might you do with a friend? Just to have fun.
Maybe you could go to the playground with them.
They went to the playground together. Yes, Teague and Billy went to the playground together. What else might they do that would be fun? What's fun to do? You ride your bikes together. They rode their bikes together. Absolutely. Anything else? What do you think they might do for fun? Anybody else have an idea? One more thing that Teague and Billy do together for fun. Oh.
Swimming.
Oh, swimming. They go to the playground together, they ride their bikes together, and they go swimming together. Fantastic. Most of the time, Teague and Billy get along just fine. But sometimes, now maybe not in real life, sometimes in the story, Teague and Billy have a problem with each other. I wonder if we could think of a problem that might happen on the playground. Can anyone think of a problem that could happen between two friends on the playground? on the slides, or they both want to play different games? That's a good one. Oh, what do you think? Sometimes Teague and Billy want to play different games on the playground. Let's see, maybe Billy wants to play. Do you have an idea for a game you might like to play?
Freeze tag.
Freeze tag. And maybe Teague wants to play hide and seek. I really appreciate that games have not changed that much. So Billy wants to play freeze tag, and Teague wants to play hide and seek, and they're not the same game, right? So let's think of, not at all the same game, absolutely. So let's think, what are some ways that Billy and Teague could approach this problem? And bad answers are welcome, or let's see, more complicated answers, or answers that maybe we think aren't where Reverend Amanda is going with the story overall. Hold on one second.
Combined them together like hide and seek tag.
That's an amazing idea, and it is.
Let's go hide and seek. Let's say hide and go seek.
Yes, it's possible that our kids are actually too adept at managing collaboration and friendship. I'm going to ask the grown-ups. What are some other ways that they could approach this? They could cry. What would that look like? They just both could cry. They'd be so sad about it. They could just stand for a while on the playground and cry. Yeah, what do you think? They could fight each other about it. That's an option too. Yeah, anything else? All the way in the back? One of them could compromise, and over here I heard take turns. Thank you, Bill. Yes, one of them could compromise. Yes? They could stomp their feet and yell. Well, we have a lot of options here. They could cry, they could compromise, they could fight about it, they could take turns, they could stomp their feet and yell, or they could come up with a combination game. What did you call it?
Hide and go seek tag.
Hide and go seek tag. And did you have a different name for it, Teague?
Hide and go seek.
Hide and go seek tag. No. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so they could combine. Which of those do you think would be the best way forward? There are several good options in there, and I guess also several good options if you like, maybe they're all good options if you like stomping your feet, which does feel good sometimes. What do you think? Maybe some consulting? What do you think? It is possible that Teague is in fact playing hide and go seek tag right now. I'm not even sure. I like this idea of combining the games. I bet that would be possible and maybe fun to have a whole different way to do a game. What do you all think? Let's vote. What about taking turns? How many? Okay, that's pretty good. What about compromise? Okay. What about, yeah, it's sort of it does cover several things. What about stomping feet? Oh, no one? And what about oh, good, Jim's gonna stomp his feet. And what about combining for a new game? Oh, I think that might take it. So Billy and Teague combined freeze tag and hide and go seek into a brand new game, never before created, amazingly. And in so doing, they were able to play at the playground even longer. The end. Thank you all so much. As our kiddos head out, I invite you to join in singing. Peace to you on your way. I can always count on our children to help out when the story is not quite right without them. I want to invite you, as we move further into our service, to come into a time of grounding and centering. To take a breath and to find yourself here in this place. This morning and indeed in the weeks before and after, we are exploring friendship in our worship services, building friendship and creating it. And Barbara's welcome and story this morning reminds us that sometimes friendship holds pain and loss as well. I want to invite you into a space of heart opening, to hold that with compassion. Take a breath, if you will. Close your eyes if it's comfortable, or soften your gaze. Imagine what it feels like to open your heart. Imagine what it feels like to open your heart to sadness, to the loss that hovers right outside your awareness, or the one that feels like a deep wound always. Imagine what it feels like to open your heart, knowing that the openness holds the breaks along the way. Take a moment just to breathe in that space, to hold whatever sorrow has made itself known in this moment. Now, if you will, with me, imagine the spirit of love, the spirit of life, like a fine thread, stitching in and around the scars and breaks, not returning your heart to its original shape, but returning it to a wholeness. Imagine that thread wrapping you up, connecting us to each other, reminding us that love is at the center and all around. And take a breath in this moment. The thread of life and love at work repairing. May we feel that spirit of life, the fuente de amor, as we go through our day.
De amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón, cántale tu canción, sopla al volar, sube en la mar. nostro moldea, la giustizia della vita, arrega me, libera me, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
This month's Share of the Plate recipient is Path Forward. Some of you may know them by their former name, ASPAN. Path Forward's mission is to transform lives by delivering housing solutions and pathways to stability. Their vision is an inclusive and equitable community where all neighbors live stable, secure, and independent lives, free from the threat of homelessness. Each year, they serve over 40,000 meals and service over 400 people at their homeless service center. For more information, visit Path Forward online at pfva.org. 70% of today's offerings go directly to Path Forward. The other 30% go directly right back into our community to support the vital programs here at UUCA. Please give generously. There are many ways to give, including cash and check at the plate, or visit uucava.org and click on Donate. And there is also more information in your order of service. Will the ushers please come collect the offering? Thank you, Sophia. So nice to have you back. The words for the offering blessing are in your order of service. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. Let us be grateful when we give, be it time, talent, or treasure. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts to nurture this congregation. Thank you. Today I offer a reflection about my friend Elizabeth. I thank you for allowing me to share these words with you. Back in June 2018, we stood in the bedroom of one of our best friends, Elizabeth. She was surrounded by her family and her closest friends, including her husband and 2 children. I was standing back holding and comforting the family dog. Lying in her hospice bed, Elizabeth's 1.5-year battle against cancer abruptly came to an end. As others left the room, I eventually found myself alone with Elizabeth, sitting by her side and holding her hand in silence. In life, Elizabeth and her husband were very different from us. While Amy and I were quiet and reserved, they were outgoing and extroverted, always smiling and laughing. They made friends easily and made everyone around them smile with their super positive energy. And they even held hands and they kissed in public in front of strangers. While Amy and I were very deliberate and careful, Elizabeth was courageous and optimistic, qualities that served her well in her fight against cancer. While Amy and I were introverted and kept to ourselves, Elizabeth was deeply interested in connecting with others. She and her husband established a nonprofit that touched the lives of thousands of kids across Arlington. During the Olympics, her favorite part was the special background stories about the athletes. The athletes weren't just performers, but real people with real stories. And during her last days, she continued her work bringing theater to the homeless. She didn't know it, but Elizabeth was very UU. And while Amy and I were a bit shy and awkward around people, Elizabeth and her husband were actors, directors, and teachers. They seemed larger than life to us. They inspired students and made people laugh and cry. Meanwhile, I still get nervous talking on the phone with people. Death seems very final. After all, the body is no more. That's what I thought as I was sat there holding Elizabeth's hand. But the thing I've come to believe is that just as you can't extinguish the sun, you can't extinguish love. The love that you bestow on others in life, it continues on. It continues to shine down on the ones you choose to share your love with. It nourishes them and helps them grow. As for me, since that day in 2018, I've continued to learn and grow as a person. I've grown to loosen up like Elizabeth and not be so quiet and reserved. Back in March, my wife Amy and I, we helped coordinate the spring dance right here at UUCA. We put together a fun event and even led others on the dance floor. UUCA even awarded us the Lightness of Being Award back in June for modeling connection, commitment, and fun, ! This is not the old Tommy Lowe. I've grown to appreciate connecting with others like Elizabeth used to. That's why I love our community here at UUCA. We have so many wonderful people and so many different ways to connect with each other. Over time, I've even come to find spirituality and power in that connection with each other. This, again, is not the old Tommy Lowe. I've grown to become more courageous like Elizabeth, and like her children who both delivered incredibly beautiful and courageous eulogies for their mother right here on the spot 6 years ago. With all of your help, I gathered up the courage and I overcame my fear of public speaking. Again, not the old Tommy Lowe. And you know what? Amy and I, sometimes we even hold hands in public, and sometimes we even kiss in public. A fact that we will prove to you right after the service. This past Father's Day, my son wrote to me and he said, quote, "I'm so proud of the growth you've gone through as a person and a dad," end quote. I think Elizabeth would be proud too. Thank you.
Well, I even knew what Tommy was going to say ahead of time. I'm thinking with a lot of tenderness of this congregation right now for folks who are visiting with us. We had a memorial service of one beloved member of the congregation yesterday, and we have a memorial service for another beloved member this afternoon. And I think this sanctuary is just filled up with tenderness and care this weekend. And apparently it is coming out my eyes. Tommy, thank you so much for that beautiful and tender story and for sharing about your life with so much generosity and inviting us into your experience of growth. What a gift to all of us. I shared earlier in my sort of preamble to the meditation, I guess, that this is part of a 3-part series here at UUCA about friendship. Last week, we talked about the importance of friendship in building meaningful lives for ourselves and in fighting fascism. It was kind of a plot twist, but a good one, I think. And I said that this week we would be learning about boundaries. And we will, I hope. But really, the larger piece that I'd like to talk about this week, perhaps one we've already heard about in Tommy's story, the larger piece I want to talk about is how to be a friend. So, I guess, welcome to kindergarten. I once preached a sermon, actually, for the folks here from the Washington Ethical Society or watching online. And I will say, if you're watching online, be sure to say hi in the chat and let people know where you're coming from so that we all feel connected to each other virtually as well. So for folks from West, they may feel as though they have remembered this. Just think of it as a core text that we're coming back to again and again. It's a children's song by John McCutcheon. I preached a piece on kindergarten rules and how they were actually a pretty good basis for a caring and connected society and a loving life ourselves. And I based it on a song that at the time, my kids were much younger, at the time my kids would sing in the car. It goes something like this: "Of all you learn here, remember this the best. Don't hurt each other and clean up your mess. Take a nap every day, wash before you eat. hold hands, stick together, look before you cross the street. Remember the seed in the little paper cup. First the roots go down and then the plant grows up. The end. I still think that this song, the chorus of it at least, sets us in the right direction if we could all manage to not hurt each other and clean up our mess. You can imagine the impact on our world and our planet. But these days, I wonder if we may need just a little bit more to figure out how to be a friend, how to be a good friend. I don't know about you, but I feel as though I am still sometimes suffering from what I think of as post-lockdown awkwardness. We see it in the congregation sometimes. In fact, on staff, we have conversations about it. We'll create spaces for folks to get together, and we'll find them there with their ice cream or their food truck food, standing near each other like this. Am I supposed to talk to these people? I don't know. Do we do that still? Should I? Nope. Sometimes we create bingo cards or scavenger hunts so that people will make friends with each other. Now you know our great plan. We are, I think, figuring out how to be in relationship again after a very weird period of relationship existing in unusual ways. And the truth is that awkwardness is not only because we all went through a major traumatic event as a country, as a world. That awkwardness exists just in normal human interaction. Last week, we talked about how much risk it takes to move from acquaintance to friendship, the risk of rejection when you make that first invitation, then the greater risk of vulnerability, the risk of intimacy, of being seen for your full, messy self. And as Tommy's story and Barbara's as well so poignantly held, friendship holds the risk of loss as well, the risk of deep sorrow, perhaps even, ultimately, the guarantee of it, the way that sorrow often comes along with love. These risks, I believe, are worth it, but there are other risks in friendships too. Risks in any close relationship, for sure, we see them in families. I'm talking now about the risk of losing ourselves in the other. Sometimes I think that we imagine that being a really good friend is something like the giving tree in that Shel Silverstein book. We give and we give and we give. We give of ourselves in order to connect, in order to meld with the other person. May I introduce you to boundaries? I think of boundaries in two ways, phrases that I did not create, but that I have repeated to myself and taught to others. Some of you will know them by heart by now. Boundaries can be understood as understanding where I end and you begin, or we might understand boundaries as the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Boundaries come to me through my work in family systems. Again, something that those of you who have been around me for a hot second have probably encountered before. Family systems is a way of thinking, a way of understanding. It's a perspective that we can use to look at the world, to understand ourselves and our place in it. And listen, I always like to say, I am not trying to sell you a toaster. Family systems is not a multi-level marketing scheme, and you will not get any extra points with me or anyone else if you like it, and you won't lose any if you don't. It's just one way to understand how the world works, so take what feels helpful and let go of the rest. Family systems posits that we are not just individuals kind of floating freeform through space, but that instead each one of us is connected to the others, people we are in relationship with, and that in fact ourselves cannot be fully understood without understanding those relationships, those connections. You can imagine the connections that I have and the connections that Tommy has and the way that the people we are connected to each other, a whole web of connections helping us to understand the big picture, the balcony view of a congregation or a family or a workplace, and also helping us to understand our own role within that, how we are within the system. One of the things that I find most helpful about family systems work, which is a broad topic that we won't go into fully, but I'll surely teach a class on this year, so sign up. One of the things that I find most helpful is the concept of self-differentiation and enmeshment. Family systems understands us to have all of our relationships existing somewhere on this spectrum. Enmeshment, was I over here with enmeshment? Enmeshment might be a relationship in which we have fully melded with another person. We can barely see where we end and they begin. That kind of relationship may feel close to us, but it actually has a much more difficult time tolerating difference. You can imagine, right? That different opinions between those two people would be hard to hold because they have sort of tangled themselves up as though they aren't separate individuals. Over on the self-differentiation end of the spectrum, and remember, it's all a spectrum. Over on the self-differentiation end of the spectrum, we have relationships in which we understand clearly our own self, and the person we are in relationship with might understand clearly their own self. We know the distance at which we can love ourselves and each other simultaneously. Now, we might negotiate or change that distance over time, but ultimately we are clear that we are two separate people in relationship with each other. Paradoxically, it is these relationships that actually have the most closeness and capacity to navigate conflict, change, and difference. Or, in the words of another kid's song, I didn't really intend that this sermon was just going to be me singing children's songs to you, but we seem to have arrived at that, so congratulations. I remember these words from Laurie Berkner, another favorite when my children were little. I'm me, and you're you. I like green, you like blue. I use tape, you use glue. I stayed short, that's true, and you grew. It doesn't matter what we do, 'cause I'm still me, and you're still you. A self-differentiated relationship. Thank you very much, Laurie. I think that relationships like this not only allow the people in them to navigate difference and difference of opinion, conflict, I think it also allows for the kind of growth and learning that Tommy spoke about so beautifully in his story. Part of what I suspect Tommy experienced in a friendship with someone who was different than he was. Tommy, I didn't really warn you that I was going to armchair psychologize you here, so sorry about that. You can see me later, I guess, if you have a problem with it. We'll talk it through because we're self-differentiated, so we'll be able to manage the conflict. Part of what he may have experienced here was a deeper understanding of who he was in that moment, in relationship to his friend Elizabeth, and as distinct from his friend. The ability to understand, to really see ourselves and our patterns, our functioning, that's what allows us to decide whether we want to shift that functioning, whether we want to move in the world and in our relationships differently. Tommy's friendship across significant difference, the risks that he took to love and to lose, and to grieve and then to be changed, helped to transform his own life. This, to me, is the magic of a family systems perspective. It helps us to maintain our focus both on the individual, on ourselves, our own functioning and growth, and on the whole system, kind of like progressive glasses, which my eye doctor says are coming for me any day now, that my children are no longer listening to preschool songs. So why are we talking about this kind of, esoteric, grounded in family therapy, organizational design stuff in church? Well, I do believe that family systems work and understanding can help us to navigate community well. Now, I am sure that none of the other congregations who are joining us here in Arlington today have ever had any conflict. There you go. I was waiting for that. But this congregation has had conflict and will continue to have conflict because, as it turns out, people are here. So, self-differentiation allows us to hold our own experiences and opinions and thoughts and to recognize that someone else has others, to stay in relationship across those differences, even when we disagree. Now, I always want to give a caveat there about the difference between a difference of opinion and someone thinking and telling you that you, your wholeness, your identity, your selfhood is somehow less. That's a different thing. That's not what we're talking about here. But self-differentiation does help us to manage conflict and the ins and outs of community life. Not a bad thing in a congregational setting. I believe, too, as we talked about, it gives us power for personal growth and transformation, helps us to understand ourselves more deeply by understanding our relationships, by reaching back to understand the stories of our ancestors, complicated as they may be, and then making choices about how we want to live to create a world for our children writ large. The children of our community, the children of our world, and the children of our own families. That kind of growth, to me, is a core part of what we are trying to do here in this experiment called congregational life. I think that understanding systems through a family systems perspective also helps us to understand systems in other ways, to understand and interrogate systems of power and privilege, to work within and then against those systems for the greater flourishing of all people. And I actually feel that family systems connects in with a particularly Unitarian, Universalist, and humanist understanding of how the world works. The preciousness of each person, the worth of each person, the wholeness, boundaried and bubbled and beautiful of each person. And the idea that we are all connected in an interdependent web. Now, we usually use more spiritually beautiful language than system and self-differentiation and enmeshment. But the idea is the same. I am a being, whole and holy. You, every single you, are a being, whole and holy. And we exist in a web of mutuality with all other beings. We forget that web at our peril. And when we pay attention to it, each one of us can grow and sparkle and be more fully ourselves than ever before. May we find ways in our friendships not only to hold difference, to grow and change, to look for the systems around us and how they serve and do not, but also, even in those relationships, to be fully and beautifully ourselves. May it be so. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing hymn number 1017. That's in your teal hymnal, Building a New Way. Oh, have a little fun with it.
We are built a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Fate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
It's time to extinguish our chalice. The words are in our order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light and warmth it represents. These we carry with us, bringing our sparks of love to the world.
Friends, I said that this sanctuary is filled up this weekend with tenderness. It's filled up with loss and with grief. It's filled up with love and celebration and memories and funny stories and laughter. It's filled up with our children and their ideas about friendship. It's filled up with all of you. I am grateful for the webs that we create together, for the wholeness and beauty of each one of us, and for the even more beautiful world that friendship allows. May it be so.